Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of weddings. I'm your host, Keith Willard. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about social media, and specifically, probably more about Pintrest. Is it heaven or hell? I have to tell you, as a wedding planner, it's a toss-up. It depends on the client. It depends on the moment, how organized they are, like as you can see. But so we have an amazing guest that's going to talk about not just about Pinterest, but social media in general. But before I get to her, let me bring Marci Guttenberg on. Hi, Marci.
Hi, Keith.
So Marci is the owner of Innovator to Remember by Marci and our co-host. I am all over the place today. I do not know what's gotten into me. So usually I'm so much more organized. So which is why I'm so glad that we're going to be talking to Julianne Smith, because she's going to be talking about organization on some of these social media pieces. Yeah.
Yes. Very exciting.
Yeah. So
social media is like sometimes it's my nemesis.
It's always my nemesis. That's the thing. It is always my nemesis. I never know, like, if I'm writing the right thing, if I'm putting the right hashtags, do I have the right, like, catchwords for Google, and luckily our expert today is going to lead us through all of those things. So let me introduce Julianne Smith. She is the Garter Girl, so to speak. She is a nationally recognized wedding accessory designer, digital media strategist, and small business educator. Julia is the owner of the Garter Girl, www.thegartergirl.com, a stylish wedding garter design company she started in 2004. It's amazing. But then she also has www.juliansmith.com, which helps creative businesses throughout the wedding industry who are struggling and confused with their online marketing. Ta-da, right here, raising my hands. So Julianne, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It's crazy because we talked a little bit offline about a couple of the things that we all face when it comes to just getting we specifically talked about Twitter. Where's my brain today? So we specifically talked about Twitter and the fact that when you first started Twitter, that you were like, okay, here we go down the rabbit hole.
Right. It was 2009, and actually that's where my business name came from.
Really?
Truly, it was my Twitter account, because my last name is Smith, so my full name is Julianne Smith. And even in 2009, literally every version of J Smith, Julianne Smith, Smith Julianne, like it was all taken. And so I don't know if I was watching like too much Gossip Girl or what, right? Because that was like the height of Gossip Girl. And I literally was just like, like Garter Girl. And that's what I did. And then it stuck. A couple years later, some industry friends were like, wait, Garter Girl's not your business name? Like, if you don't change that immediately, and then I trademarked it, and that was the end of that.
Okay, so did you start making garters? Is that how you started in the business, like when you first got started?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So you started doing garters, and then as you were trying to figure out how to promote your business via social media is when you really started discovering these other pieces and parts, and you went, you know what? I'm actually better at this than most.
Yes. Well, okay.
So I made to be proud of that. It's okay to be proud of that.
Sweet.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
So I made my first wedding garter in 2004 for my friend her name is Brooke, and she is so super stylish. And it was one of those things where there's like 15 bridesmaids and there's the maid of honor, and it's like everybody gets a job, and this is your job, and my job was the garter, right? And it was like, and by the way, Brooke really wants a garter.
Yes, I know.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is something she wants. And I love her. They totally supportive of my business. It was like their idea, but like she's fun and stylish and she's great. And so I literally ended up just making it myself. Now, truth be told, I'm like one of those DIYers, and I'm always crafting. My mom sews. My mom's a seamstress. I grew up around sewing. So I literally just made it myself.
Right.
And that was how it started. And every year on her anniversary, she'll Brooke, my friend, will send me pictures of her her garter, but it's hysterical. Anyway, that's the short version of how the business started. But you're right. I am just a one woman show, right? Sewing my little little like material together. And I, at the time, was like, oh, I'm going to get my garters in all these dress shops and it's going to be amazing. And well, what happens when you go, okay, to the dress shops? They're like, I'm sorry, what? No, like, no. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, now what do I do? And I had this little thing called a blog and a website, and like nobody told me no on my blog. Right. I could write about it as much as I want, and I could do whatever I wanted, and there was no editor because the editor was me.
Right.
And so
100%.
Right. Then all of a sudden, all this traffic started coming to me, and people were finding me on my own. So then I kind of switched from this wholesale model to just direct consumer, because I was bringing in all the traffic by myself. So whether it was Google through my blog or Pintrest, which is where a majority, I know we're going to talk about that today, but it's where like a lot of my clients come from. They just
and I love this.
They find me on my own. I kind of just did it myself.
Well, and I love this because what one person, let's say your store manager, there's people that are owning the stores that you were going to, what they thought the public wanted and what they really wanted were two separate things. Right. Because you still had a huge amount of people that were coming to you and saying, I want a garter. I want this. I can't get it through my local store, so I'm going to come to you. So you had to get your messaging out there somehow to people. And you talked about your blog. So how did that, like, how did you figure out, okay, here is my little store and I need to get my message out there. I need to get in front of people that want my product. How did you even figure that out? Because as a planner, okay, so let me, as a wedding planner, the knot, great. The wedding wire, great. But are those really the client base that I want?
Maybe.
Part-time, because most of them are probably not really needing a planner. They're looking to do their DIY, do it yourself brides. So here you are, a small business, getting a turn down, so to speak, from these shops and owners, and you've discovered Twitter. Yeah. So
it wasn't a turn down, so to speak. It was a turn down. And the thing that was like so great about, so this is the dirty little secret of like wholesale, right?
Right.
In order to sell wholesale, which it means you sell it to the dress shop or you sell it to the shop, then they mark it up 50%. Sometimes like 1.5, so 50 plus another half. So like sometimes it's 1.5. But on my website, I only had to sell one in order to make the same that I was making for selling two. So it was kind of nice, better margins, as they call it.
Right.
And so I had to kind of work a little less. Now, back when I started blogging, that was the only thing, right? It was like blog, and then kind of Twitter came along, and I blogged, it was like 2010, 2009. I blogged every day for a year. You haven't lived until you've blogged every day for a year about a wedding garter.
I was about to say,
let's talk about going into the weeds. And
I don't even like writing a thank you note, for God's sake. I had the hardest time with a thank you note. I can't imagine having to do a blog every single day about, a garter.
Well, I also didn't, but here's the thing, like I didn't have money to advertise. I didn't have money to, get my stuff in dress shops and do all the slick, cool, like stuff you have to, and go to they do like shows, trade shows, like in New York, everyone, and bridal dress shows at the time. Like I was like, I don't have any money for that, but this blog, it's free, and like no one tells me no.
Right.
And so I just did what I could do, and I really started just trying to show that I was the expert on stuff, right? And so it was like little questions like, which leg wears the wedding garter? How high up do I wear the wedding garter? Do I have to get a wedding garter? What is a tossing garter? What if I don't want to do the garter toss? And it was like all those things. And then it kind of morphed into which is like my thing, what I'm kind of known for now, which is, what do I do with my mom's wedding dress? I don't want to wear it. It's really special to me. My mom held on to it for all these years, or my mom passed away, or my grandmother.
Right.
And I don't know what to do with this. I want to do something really special with it, something really sentimental with it. And just kind of like hanging it in a closet, what are my options? And so I kind of explored all those things through my blog. And
that's really interesting.
People who, because they're typing it in, right? They're typing in, what is a wedding garter?
Right.
Or that, you know, what's my number one search? I think I wrote the post in 2009, maybe 7. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But it was the title of it, What's the Purpose of a Wedding Garter? It is still, I get like thousands of hits a month on it.
I love that.
Wow, that's great.
And it's funny because like, it's just me. Like, it's just little me and my laptop, and like, I'm just plugging away. And here I am ranking like number 1 for this really big term.
That's gotta be amazing
over
though.
like, you know, the other big box retailers that sell the same product that I do.
Well, but it's like bow ties, you know, bow ties are making a comeback, but, you know, people that make specialized bow ties, the ones that do the peacock feathers, or the ones that, you know, use the dad's coat from, you know, the great grandfather's coat. I mean, those are specialized, and those you don't want to just give to anybody. You want somebody that's going to take care of it and handle it and handle it with care, as it should be, for your special day. And I feel like the garter, this thing is also the same thing. But what I find interesting though is that you started this in 2004, but were you a political communication strategist?
I worked in politics. Yeah, because that's what people in DC do, right? Oh, I live in Washington DC. So yeah, everyone has like serious jobs here. Right. And so, yeah, no, I worked on Capitol Hill for a while. I worked in the White House for a little bit.
But that was before you started the garter business.
Before garters and babies, I did. Actually, so I made my first garter while I was still working. No, while I was still working in politics and PR and media and stuff like that. But then it wasn't until after I had my daughter that I was like, I'm kind of bored.
Right.
The stay-at-home mom thing, like I wanted to be a mom who was available, but staying home and doing nothing just didn't gel with my personality. So, and I knew I could never work in politics, like with a kid, the way that I wanted to work, which is like obsessively. Right. So I just was like, okay, I'm going to give this garter business a year and see how I do. And once it stops being interesting or fun, I'll give it up. And here we are.
Well, okay. Oh, well, wait. So how did that come to United with Love?
Oh, yeah, my blog.
I mean, I find you, I find you endlessly fascinating, actually, because here you are in DC working in politics. Then you're like, oh, let me start a garter company because nobody else is doing it. Okay. And then you started a United with Love. I mean, what? Like, did you get bored in between being busy with a kid?
No, not at all. Here's the problem.
I feel like you're the massive overachiever.
So remember how I said, oh, I'm going to, do this garter thing. I'm going to give it up. Well, that same year, I brought that same like DC, like we're just going to like do it mentality to wedding garters. Turns out, selling or promoting in the wedding industry is a whole lot easier in politics. Why? Because everything's pretty and it's gorgeous and it sells easier. And so I brought that same sort of like mentality.
Yeah.
And a lot of my, and so like within that first couple years, like I was on the Martha Stewart show. Remember when she had a show?
Yeah.
And I was in the magazine a couple of times, and I was on the Today Show, and I was like, I did like, and on and the not and and it was just like, here I was, this just random person.
Right.
And so I was like able to kind of translate it that way. But then to answer your question, so this was a very long answer. So I had a lot of people that were coming at me like wanting to network and have coffee. And I'm like, I don't drink coffee. God. Like I have a baby and I don't drink I don't even drink coffee.
I'm too busy.
Right. All these local planners and photographers were like, let's get coffee. So what I did was I lived, and I still do, but I lived in this like really cool part of the city where everyone wanted to come. So I was like, once a month,
Right.
I'm going to the bar. You can, whoever emailed me that month, I was like, here's where I'm going to be. And I basically started this like email list, and they would come. And for like the first time I was like, oh my God, no one's coming. And then, you know, like the second week and the third week, and then month, and it just grew. And it was this like thing. And this was before like Instagram or whatever. So we're sitting and before everything had to be like pretty, you couldn't network unless it was like Instagram worthy. Right.
Right.
And so you couldn't just go to an industry event and unless it was like, you could get content out of it. This was like truly going and networking.
Right.
And so anyway, I was at one of my happy hours and I was like, I'm so tired of seeing these weddings that they keep posting on the major publications that happen around DC, right? It's always the same, right? It's a bride and a groom, and she's in a strapless dress with a red rose bouquet, and she's standing on Pennsylvania Avenue, dipped back, and it's like this ultra traditional thing, and it's like, oh, by the way, over $100,000.
Right.
There's got to be people around here that are, I don't know, same sex. There's got to be people around here who are not having red flowers and who are not standing on Pennsylvania Avenue and are not spending $500,000 on their wedding. Like, where are those weddings, right? So I was like, this area really needs its own blog. And like, all the eyes looked at me. And so that's how I started a blog for weddings in Washington, D.C.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. So then, and I really like we called it like fresh inspiration for DC weddings. And we tried to feature like everything that you weren't seeing on the big blogs or the Knot or wherever. We really just wanted to showcase like real weddings, real couples, real budgets, things like that. But I did the same thing that I did with Garter Girl. It was like, how much does it cost to get married in DC? How do I get a marriage license in DC? There's like little questions that people are typing into Google. And I know you're like a wedding planner and you do the invitations, like even with the most high-end service provider, you still have like questions. And where are you going for those questions, right? You're going to Google. To get answers.
What I find fascinating is that you have built an industry based on fringe marketing, right? So these were all.
What did you say? Fringe marketing?
Fringe marketing. I know I just made that up.
No, anyway, that's great. That's a thing. That's the
thing. But you know what I mean? I mean, these weren't mainstream kind of things. These aren't the Garter and the Love. I mean, these were not things that you were finding in the magazine straight up, right? Because they were featuring all these other things that were kind of impossible, really, for people.
You would open up the magazine and you would go, this looks like, who are even these people?
Right. I can't afford that.
I couldn't imagine. And also, like, I couldn't imagine wanting to get married around here and opening up and saying, like, this doesn't look like me.
And maybe I don't even like red roses, and maybe I'm not a size 2, and maybe I don't want to be at, the Palladium, for God's sakes.
Because there was overly editorialized, I guess. It didn't look real.
It was so traditional, and
that's amazing.
Which is this area, yes, it's very serious and it's very traditional. However, there's a whole other side. And anyway, so I did the blog for 6 years.
Yes.
And then I sold the blog because I was like, 2 businesses, I can't take it.
Right.
And so I just was like, I have to pick. And I picked the Garter business because I was like, I love my clients and I love making things. And I love the blog. I met so many amazing people. I mean, I had like 6 people working for me. It was amazing.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, it wasn't mine. And I was just showcasing other people's stuff.
Right.
And so I was like, I have to choose because it's going to break me. So I chose the Garter business, and then I sold the blog. And the rest is history. I haven't looked back. on the blog.
Now you're an expert when it comes to Pinterest and getting your site recognized. And I'm assuming it's because of your history with these other, right? I mean,
I like how you connected the dots there.
Well, because I feel like that's how we all learn. It's not so linear all the time. Sometimes we're picking up things. I mean, I used to be a director of catering for Ritz-Carlton, but I also used to work for Dun & Bradstreet. I mean, they don't always make sense together.
But they do.
Yeah. Right. And so you were picking up little pieces of here and there, and this is how I get noticed. This is what people are looking for, and this is how, maybe even how Google uses its analytics to make sure that you are the company that comes up when they ask that question.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of understanding like it's two pieces. It's like understanding what you want to be found for and like those questions that people are asking, but at the same time it is what do you want to be found for? Because Keith, you get to decide,
right?
And like that's the thing that I keep saying about my blog. It's like no one told me no, and so I get to decide. And if you're frustrated about, I hear this a lot of times, whether it's the traffic that they're getting from Pinterest or the traffic they're getting from their website,
right?
It's like it's not the right client. I'm not getting, it's not my ideal client. Right. And
is there such a thing as an ideal client? I mean, I love my clients, but come on.
Okay. Yeah. But I will say it's because you're not attracting what you want. I do believe like you put out there what you get back.
Right.
And so if you're not in politics, it was like, I forget how we used to call it. It was like, it's either a problem with the message or the messenger.
Oh, right? Gotcha. Yeah.
In this case, it's truly like a problem with the message. If you're not getting back what you want, right? The problem is what you're putting out there. And what I love so much about Google or Pinterest or, Instagram, whatever, it's like you get to decide. So if you don't like what you're getting back, that's on you.
Yeah, but how did you get into Pinterest? How did Pinterest become the thing that you were like?
Yes, here's the big misunderstanding between Pinterest and social media is that Pinterest is not social media. Pinterest was started by people who used to work at Google. So Pinterest is a search engine.
Oh.
And so when you're on
I didn't know that, by the way. I didn't know that.
So when you're on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, it's entertainment, right? You're looking to as a wedding planner or invitation designer, you're like, hey, I'm a real person, right? Behind these beautiful invitations, it's me. And, behind this beautiful work is a real person. You're trying to show your personality. You're trying to connect with people. You're trying to entertain, right? Whether it's with the reels or the TikTok dances and all that stuff, right? You're trying to be a real person.
Right.
Okay. But that's not the case on Pinterest, and that's not the case on Google. Google and Pinterest are search engines. So it's those questions like, how much does a wedding in Fort Lauderdale cost? What is an RSVP card and when do I need to send it out? What is a save the date? Because I know it's not an STD.
Right.
And it's those those kinds of questions. And where are people going for that, right? They're going not to Instagram because you can't type in what is a save the date into Instagram. You're going to go to Google or you're going to go to Pinterest. Now, the big difference between Google and Pinterest and YouTube to a certain extent is that they're search engines, right? So Google is search with words, Pinterest is search with pictures, and then YouTube is search with video, right? And so Pinterest is the number 3 search engine in the world behind Google and YouTube, and then Pinterest. And Pinterest plays so well for the wedding industry, for clients and on the vendor side.
Right.
Is it's pictures, it's pretty,
know,
it's what we do.
Fascinating that you got to this point out of all of this to realize, because I had zero idea that Pinterest was a search engine based on pictures.
But do you use Pinterest?
I hate Pinterest.
You do? Marci, do you use it?
I do, but I use it more for personal than I do for business, and I know I really need to.
I mean, I use it.
No,
I have to, but
just
it's a have to. It's not a want to. It's a have to.
Okay, here's the question.
Yeah.
Do your clients use it? Do they come
Yes.
to you and say, Marci, this is my mood board.
Yep.
Go.
100%.
most of the time they come to me saying, I want this invitation. And as an invitation consultant,
Mm.
we work with there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies out there. And there's no one person, one invitation consultant who works with every company, because there are so many.
Yeah.
And I only work with the ones that are here in the US. And a lot of the content that people find on Pinterest happens to be from other countries.
Really?
Which is very much of a struggle, because they're coming to me with an expectation that I can't fulfill because I don't work with the companies outside of the US.
Right.
I think a florist would, and I don't want to speak for florists since I'm not one, but I think they would have the same, and Keith, you might know this too.
Right.
Like, it's like, here's this, bouquet or this floral arrangement that I want. And you're like, great, but not your season and not your area.
Well, and especially
so to
now,
Marci's point, it's like not in the country. It
Well,
can
and
be really hard.
and even right now, it just a lot of florals are just not available because of what happened over the last couple of years. There weren't people planting the seeds, farming the farms. So now we're just having a massive floral shortage. But again, it's a picture. People bring us a picture, and that picture could have taken weeks to produce.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
one photo, right?
Mhm.
And then if you're asked to reproduce that photo multiple times, let's say it is a floral centerpiece, right? And then they're like, well, but I want this for my wedding of 300 people. Well, that means that one centerpiece that somebody probably spent days or hours working on, the perfect lighting, the perfect everything, that they now want reproduced by 30 tables in a real environment.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part.
This is one thing I used to do when I had the blog. And this was when, styled shoots, styled photography sessions were really kind of coming about, and everyone was doing them. And I used to say there's inspirational, there's aspirational, and then there's absurd. And I would refuse to post. It took me a long time to even post non-real weddings, because I was like, well, this is just not realistic.
Right.
And so I would not, I don't want to say anything bad, because people are expressing themselves and they're kind of showing what they do, and they're trying to push the envelope forward. However, if you're dragging furniture out into the middle of a field on the edge of a cliff, like, how real is that? Or if you're taking wild animals and decorating them in, like, all the orchids, like, how?
But see, that becomes.
But then people see that and they think it's real, and then you're like, right, just so you know, if you want to like replicate that times X number of tables, here's your budget. And so I think that's where us
real question. That's the question. As a company, how do you compete against that, and how do you make sure that you're getting in front of people using the right words, the right hashtags, the right any of that, to make sure that people understand that this is a real photo and not a staged photo, that my photos are real weddings, and you want to look at these photos versus that photo, because it's realistic.
It's twofold. It's one, like, how do you handle it on your side? Meaning, like, how do I manage my client's expectations? Say, this bouquet is beautiful, but it's going to cost you X, and here's why. It's out of season. The flowers aren't being produced. It's, oh, by the way, like, I don't know, 35 pounds just to carry, like, and all those kinds of things. It's like, how do you manage your client's expectations, saying, like, this is truly inspirational, and here's how we're going to make your dreams come true within your budget and your season. And I mean, I remember when Pinterest first started, and like, all the things that do really well on Pinterest are like those, like outdoor California vineyard, like so beautiful. And here I am on the East Coast, and we're like, hello, hotel ballrooms. We love lighting. And like, it was like, and people would tell me all the time, like, oh, like, don't even bother submitting your weddings to the big publications. They only want to see the outdoor. And I was like, well, just so you know, that's not real for what happens around here.
Right.
So I think it's like, it's you as the vendor setting your clients' expectations from the start. Like, so glad that you were able to find some ideas. I can understand a little bit more about what you're looking for, but let me tell you, not just like why you can't have all these things, but it's more like, let me explain to you like why, instead of just saying no. And like almost like judging you for even bringing it to my attention. It's more like, this is helpful. I can see what you're thinking, but let me tell you like why. And I think a lot of times, like I've been through a lot of home construction projects, right? And it's like the construction people are always like, absolutely anything's possible. And then you get the bill and you're like,
now
I know why it's
possible.
If you had just told me like, hey, if you put the window here as opposed to here, you're going to save yourself $100,000, something like that. And it was like, I wasn't that vested in having the window right in this spot. I would have, if you had explained it to me. And I think that's where as vendors, we have to be like open and just like in a non-judgmental way, explain to our clients, like,
so if you're
I hear you,
business,
I see you.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're a small business, right, and you're just and you're the, let's say the Garter Girl for starting, how do you compete against some of these bigger shops and some of these bigger organizations? Because sometimes these are big marketing companies that's their whole job is to get their people noticed. So they're providing the right hashtags, the right wording, the right everything. Where does a small business go in order to find out, what is the right thing that they should be putting as in their format? Like, how do you get noticed by people?
I think it's a lot of things, but at the end of the day, like whether you're this big publication or you're this big blog or this big business, like you don't have what you guys have, and that's the connection to the clients. You know the questions that they're being asked.
Right.
And let's say you take your frequently asked questions and you write a blog post on every single one of them. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, maybe you only have the energy to do 1. But like, those specific questions that the people in your area that want to hire you are asking. And let's say, we'll just use this one because we keep talking about it, but it's like, how much does a wedding in Fort Lauderdale cost?
Right.
Or what are the, I don't know, 2 best places to have my rehearsal dinner wherever in your area? And you could see how we could replicate this. But if you give your answer and what you think, that makes you different than like the big guys. Because the truth is, and and I know, and we all know that they're typing in those questions and you know what they're asking because they're asking you. And if you take your frequently asked questions and you turn it into a blog post.
Right.
Because here's the deal. This is what Google wants. This is what Pinterest wants. They're like a matchmaker. Right? They're like, they want to serve up the right answer that solves that person's problem, right? Because if they don't, like, let's say you go to Pinterest and you type in like, chicken taco recipes and you just get back like a bunch of like fiesta party inspiration and you're like, this Pinterest sucks. They never give me what I want.
Right.
Right? But let's say you type into Pinterest chicken taco recipes and you get like the 10 best recipes of your life. You're like, Pinterest is amazing. Okay. Same with Google. Like, they want to give the people what they're asking for, but it's on you as the wedding vendor professional is to give them the information that they can give back. And so, because remember, like Google, Pinterest, they don't make anything. They don't do anything. They need us. They need you. They need us content creators.
That part.
Pinterest doesn't do anything. This is why I sold the blog.
Right.
Because I didn't do anything. I just took everyone else's stuff and I posted it and said, isn't this pretty?
Yeah,
and
but
like,
how did you become the #1 website for your thing? Just by
blogging.
Just by blogging.
Yeah.
Really? But and
it wasn't just blogging like, oh, here's like
something pretty.
It was like, here is a custom lace wedding garter. Which leg gets the wedding garter? How high up
So you were answering very specific questions.
Very
You
specific
weren't being
questions.
generalized.
And then this is the answer to what you were originally asking, which it took me a long time to answer that. So I'm sorry about that. But it's
No
like,
worries.
you are the professional. You are talking directly with the people. You know those questions they're asking.
Right.
So whether you're on Pinterest or whether you're on your blog, Google, whatever, if you tag your photos, if you put the titles in, you put the right descriptions in, when someone goes to Pinterest and types rehearsal dinner locations in Florida, and that's all over your website,
Right.
Pinterest is going to serve you up because, again, they're the connector.
So let me ask you, if you're saying that, Pinterest is the search board for photos, is it, but it only takes photos that you upload to Pinterest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So even if you do it even if you're like on Facebook, Instagram, Google, social media, all these other things, if you don't invest some time into Pinterest is not going to be investing time into you.
Right.
Is that right?
True statement.
Okay. So no matter what, even if you put in the hashtags and all that beautiful stuff at the very end of all your stuff that everybody keeps telling you, the SEO, quote unquote, is that right? SEO? Because I'm a newbie on this.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
It's not going to be pulling it up on Pinterest because Pinterest is based on the photos that you put out there, not
Exactly.
the photos that are being found through Google or through Instagram.
Well,
So
it's like a third-party platform. So it's like saying, well, I uploaded all this stuff to Instagram. Like, why can't they find me on TikTok?
right.
It's a third party. It's like its own entity. And so again, this is what I was saying. Like, they don't make or do anything. So they need people to post their stuff.
So what makes more sense for somebody that's in a small business? So let's say, because, our time is short, right? Obviously, between handling our new clients, handling taxes, handling accounting, handling marketing, handling all this other crap that keeps coming after us. Boom, 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 boom. Now we also have to worry about social media. Is there a platform that goes across all of these different entities that you feel is a great place to start with as a small business? In other words, is there a platform that goes across all these third-party pieces that you can make one post and it posts to Pinterest, it posts to Instagram, it posts to, or is it just Pinterest is unique and you need to invest time in it?
Well, I'll answer that in one way.
Okay.
2 ways. Number one, it's like, the reason why I love Pinterest is because that's where, if you're in the wedding and event industry, that's where your clients are.
Interesting.
I'm not saying they're not on Instagram. I'm not saying they're not on Facebook and they're not on TikTok, because they're probably in those places too. But when they have their wedding planning hat on, they're not necessarily going like to
I get that.
And when they're looking for inspiration, or they're like, how do I convey to my 40 plus vendors what my vision is? They're going to Pinterest and they're creating a board and they're dreaming of ideas, and they're, or they're looking for like a wedding dress and they want to see the different styles. Like, it's hard to categorize stuff and organize stuff on Instagram because it's a social media site. It's for entertainment. It's not meant to be categorized and organized. So Pinterest plays really well into wedding planning because they have boards, and you can make secret boards and public boards, and it really plays well into wedding planning.
Yeah, but see, that gets confusing for me, because then I start thinking, okay, I have to start creating boards now. I can't just post a picture and say, look at my pretty flowers, look at my red roses in DC.
Okay, so then this gets to my second answer to your question, is that there is other schedulers that you can do. So like, you can get like a Tailwind or a Hootsuite or one of these Planoly, a scheduler where you can schedule your Instagram, your Pinterest, your Facebook all in one. And so I think you were asking, like, is there a place where I can go and schedule it all? And that answer is yes. But in the end, you're still publishing like just to Pinterest or just to Instagram or just to
You still have to put the work in, basically.
Yeah, you do. And this is why I love Pinterest so much, is because it does play really well into wedding planning, because so many engaged couples are using it to like dream and be inspired. And also like Pinterest loves and encourage, because they're not an entertainment site, they're a search and discovery site. Like, they allow pre-scheduling. I don't spend more than like an hour a month on my Pinterest.
Right.
If that.
Is Pinterest dates? Is it date specific? In other words, do your older Pinterest postings come in secondary versus this week or yesterday or today?
You are asking the questions. I love this. Okay.
I mean, right.
So I did this research and I don't have it. I can look it up, but basically it's something like the shelf life of an Instagram post is like 48 hours.
Right.
Meaning like you post it within 2 days, it's done,
it's
gone, it's done.
Right.
The shelf life of like a tweet is something like 9 seconds. It's something absurd.
Yeah, it's
and
ridiculous.
Then,
yeah.
I think a TikTok is
probably less, 3 seconds.
No, it's actually like a little more the way their algorithms work. It's not the most offensive one. It's not like offensive like Twitter.
Right.
But the shelf life of a Pinterest pin is like 3 months.
Really? Because, you know, when you put in, when I go, okay, let's say that I'm a bride and I say, I want to, because this is a big thing right now, is boho.
I'm going to find this.
Boho, pampas grass, hexagon ceremony, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of that's fairly specific, right? So it'll pull up, but I mean, there are a million pampas grass, hexagon.
Okay, but here's the key. Here's what makes you different than somebody else.
Okay.
In your area.
Right.
In Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, in this place, because to Marci's point earlier, is it's unhelpful if you get a bunch of traffic of people that are never going to hire you. But
exactly.
Once you start adding those geographical or those locational things on there, is you then start distinguishing yourself between someone who's in California or someone who's in South America or someone who's in New York.
But does a bride really put
in
in
USA versus China or something?
But does a bride really put in geographical filters?
Yeah.
They do.
Okay. What's the number one thing that every couple getting married needs?
Therapy.
I didn't know this was a comedy show.
Oh, that's great.
And I took the day off, so Keith, I love it.
I know. I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm going home.
Mic drop on that one.
Just saying.
Bye. Show's
Okay,
over.
sorry.
That's a wrap, kids. Sorry about the short show today. Join us in a moment for.
Okay, sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
while I regroup.
Well, I thought that was a real question. I was
you
like,
should host your own show.
I should. But you know, seriously, I mean, okay. So what is the first question? A first question a couple should say.
Emotional stability aside.
Okay.
What is the one thing that every couple needs?
An officiant.
Maybe?
No, I was actually going to say direction.
Brooke, do you know?
I would say a plan, a ring, something. Checkbooks. Therapy was great, really.
Okay, so then I'll help you. Right? Drink.
Yeah.
No, they need a location. They need a venue.
Oh,
I don't care if that venue is your backyard,
maybe
the Ritz-Carlton, by the pool, on the beach, in the mountain. Everyone needs a location.
Yeah, but don't most couples already have a location? Don't they usually say, "Oh, I've always wanted to get married
on the beach or
on the beach"? Yada, yada.
So then, what are they doing? They're going into Pinterest and they're like, "Best beach wedding dresses."
Okay.
Best flowers for mountain weddings.
Got you.
Got
you. Yes, I'm following.
Fall wedding flowers in Washington, D.C.
Okay, now I'm following.
This is one that happens a ton. You've booked your venue.
Yep.
Now you want to see what it looks like.
Oh, yeah. So you go in
so
and
you're typing in Ritz-Carlton, Washington, D.C. at night. You want to see, where do I put that wedding cake? Because I want to know where that exit sign is.
Right.
What does it look
Okay.
like in the rain? What does it look like at night? What does it look like with this uplighting, that uplighting, this
Interesting,
downlighting, these
interesting,
globos, this, all the things. Okay.
Right.
Or maybe you're trying to decide between a certain venue or a certain location, or maybe like I use this example in one of the presentations because I do a lot of Pinterest education and training, and like this bride who had like a very high-end budget wedding, she went to Google and typed in mountain wedding locations.
Right.
And it took her to a Pinterest board full of mountain wedding locations. And then she went down the Pinterest rabbit hole, but she ended up booking like a 5-star wedding location venue in Aspen, Colorado, which is
ridiculous.
So expensive.
Yes. So expensive.
And then so you get a lot of flack, and we haven't talked about this, but it's like all the couples coming from Pinterest are a bunch of DIY brides. She is not
yes.
a DIY bride.
Exactly. Right.
She just was looking for ideas, and it's that locational piece that's going to set you apart from the next person.
So let me ask you, you are that venue in Aspen, Colorado. What did you put in your post?
Well, you did nothing because you're not good at it. And some other 100%.
Some
other blogger.
And here comes the read.
Exactly.
Right.
I like
So what happened was it was a photographer's board on mountain wedding locations. So they then found their way to this venue.
So does it have options in Pinterest for you to put location, geographic location, et cetera, and then what about like keywords? Are keywords super important in Pinterest?
Yes. And what is a keyword, you ask?
Thank you very much. I was actually going to go there because keywords. Everybody says keywords, and then you're like, okay,
It's amazing. What's a keyword?
I'm just really glad that this is like going to be converted to a podcast, and nobody saw that motion that I just did.
So keywords is really simple. It's that exact phrase that you want someone to type into Google or Pinterest to find you.
So
here's the cool part about being the vendor on the one who's submitting the content.
Right.
You get to decide. When you advertise on The Knot, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I'm just using this as an example. The Knot decides. They decide like where.
Oh no, it's based on money because believe me, I pay a lot of money to be on the first page.
Okay, but they decide who's coming to their website and who's showing it. But when you get to decide, when you get to, so you can decide if you like, say you have a photo of a bouquet, and you get to decide if you want to call it a blush bouquet for a fall wedding in Washington D.C., or if you want to call it a pink bouquet for a fall wedding at the Ritz-Carlton. Like, you get to decide that. And you get to decide what someone is going to type into Google or Pinterest to find you. You get to choose. And I always say, I use this example, and he knows and he loves me anyway. It's like, I always say Pinterest or Google or the search engine is like my husband. Right? They don't see pretty things. They don't see that it's a picture of flowers.
Right. You have to tell them.
You have to tell it with words. With words. And you have to tell it not just once or twice. You have to tell him over and over and over again.
I already like your husband.
This is a sweater, right? And we have bubble sleeves, and it matters. And I don't care if it looks like the other one. It's different. And so Google is like my husband, or Pinterest, right? Is like, you have to tell it over and over again with words. I'll never forget when I first started United with Love, the blog, other bloggers and other wedding professionals, they used to make fun of me. And they would be like, you actually have words on your blog. But you actually have words. And I'm like, are these people kidding me? Like, it's like a little bot. It doesn't see pictures.
So what about synonyms, right? So we get into synonyms for, let's say that you have a specific phrasing that you put in, but yet there are words that are similar to the words that you're putting out there. I mean, how much effort do you really have to put into West Coast? The sun sets here.
Right.
There's a beach. There's, I mean, oh my God, it could get really crazy.
I know. You talk about rabbit hole, but here's the deal.
Yeah.
a lot of SEO and marketing experts will tell you, oh yeah, you got to switch it up. And then you got to say that. I'm sorry.
Keep it basic.
I only blog about, write about, post about wedding garter.
Right.
I haven't switched it up in over 10 years and it hasn't affected me. And the truth is, if you get to the point where you're like, wow, I'm really saying this phrase a lot, like then we can have that conversation. But until you get to that point, like I just think it's pointless. And I'll give you a great example. So this client that I had, and he hired me to do the SEO on his website, and he was a catering company in DC.
Right.
And he was like, no, Julie, I want to know, like, what are those words that people are typing into Google?
Right.
And I'm like, you mean catering in DC? Wedding menu, wedding food, Washington, DC? Like, it doesn't get any more complicated than that. And I think as wedding professionals, because we're everything and we just want the next client, right? You think that it's more difficult than it needs to be. Clients don't use inside baseball terms. It's really basic. Caterer, wedding, Washington, DC.
Right.
Done. End of story. There's not like a magic phrase. There's not like a magic thing. Like people, especially in our industry, we use a lot of these like inside baseball terms, like rental. Like what's a rental? Or my favorite, like shoot. They call it a styled shoot. Like what is that? Because where I am, shoot means like with guns. And like,
well, is that with an
that's
E?
not what we're
I was going to say.
But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is like wedding ideas, wedding inspiration, wedding photographs. Like,
so do you mean to keep it simple? So would you? I mean, if you're if you're let's say you're just creating your Pinterest board, because that's going to be me now. I'm just creating my Pinterest board, and so do I then say? So I have a wedding at, let's say I'm going to say Hyatt, at the Hyatt in South Beach. Do I keep it simple and say South Florida Hyatt wedding sunset?
Done.
Right? Don't add extra to that. Don't say blush is my signature color. Shut up, Brooke. You know where I'm going with that. I know. She was totally going steal my
should never.
No, listen, because remember what I said, like Pinterest they don't make or do anything.
Right.
But they don't know who you are and what you're about unless you tell them.
Right.
So they give us opportunities to tell us, like, help me help you. Like, right. So because again, they have that credibility problem. They want, when someone types in, Hyatt South Beach wedding, they want to know what it's going to look like. Where am I putting that cake? Okay. And so it's like, if you don't have when you have a board and you've got a bunch of pins that are all labeled Hyatt South Beach, Pinterest is like, this is about the Hyatt and South Beach. So now I can serve them up to when somebody types that in. Now, is it going to be like 4,000 times a day that someone's typing in the Hyatt South Beach? No. But the 1 or 2 times they do, and they serve you up, and that person loves you because you just solved their problem. Right. And then they hire you because they're like, dude, this guy's done like 500 weddings at this place. He knows what he's talking about. I'm going to hire him because you just solved their problem. You're the expert. You said I'm the expert without having to say I'm the expert, because you've got like 10 weddings you've done at this location. And you solve their problem. You help them. They're going to love you forever.
I feel like that you're probably the best spokesperson for Pinterest ever, because everybody's talking about Instagram and Facebook and all these social medias and Google, blah 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 blah, and you're saying, you know what? If you just focus on Pinterest, you're probably going to get a much better return on your time investment versus some of these other places.
Yes, I always say it's like the best cost per whatever, because again, to your point that you were saying earlier, like we have a million things to do, and Pinterest and Instagram are like pretty far down the list. And so I'm trying to look for those things that are going to be the best use of my time, that cost benefit analysis, which is like why you would never catch me posting something on Instagram that wasn't like first on my blog, but can also be like altered to be posted on, like I make content once.
Right.
And then it gets posted in all these different places. And so I often see like, okay, we're going to make this reel. And then that's it. And then we're going to write this blog post.
Right.
And then we're going to send this email. And
Right.
then, and it's like, are you kidding me? I have time for one. And then it's going to have to be scheduled out in multiple platforms. And like, because here's the deal, right? Like, I'm not trying to be an Instagram influencer. That's not where I make my money. I'm not trying to be a Pinterest influencer. That's not where I make my money. I make my money selling wedding garters. You make your money with the invitations. You make your money with planning the weddings. Your job is to bring in that steady stream of potential clients.
That's really, I have to tell you, we do this show every week for the last 2 years, and we have talked to 1 million people. And I have to say, you are the very first person that I thought, I get that.
Oh,
because I know, but because I think, and I sit here and I think about that because we've talked about Instagram posts and about how to get more likes on Instagram, and we've talked about Facebook. If
that's where you make your money. Yes,
right?
You need to worry about the likes.
Right.
You do. I'm not saying like if you are like some YouTube star and that's where you make your money, then you need to do that. You need to worry about.
That's what I'm saying is that the Instagram.
That's not what you need to worry about now.
Because your likes on Instagram are 70, 80, 300, 500, but that's it. That's it. That's
and also you don't get to take them with you. So all of a sudden when Instagram's like not even a thing anymore, and it will be someday, I think about like Twitter. I mean, that's where I got my business name. My trademarked business name came off of Twitter.
Right.
And I haven't tweeted in probably 7 years. I'm not saying, it's like,
that's funny. I love that.
It just doesn't. And so I guess the reason why I love Pinterest and the search engines, it's like, it's going where, this might be a bad phrase, but it's like it's like this fish in a barrel. Like there's fish there.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So let me ask you. Okay, so now that we've taken up a lot of time.
Sorry to compare engaged couples to fish in a barrel.
No, you didn't. You really didn't. So if
you're more than fish in a barrel to me.
Yes, you are. You're goldfish and you're koi and you're other fish.
Swordfish.
You're tarpon. Anyway, so now that let's say you're an event planner, right? You're an event professional and you have a bride that comes up to you and says,
you're based in South Florida.
And you're based in South Florida. But no, that is say that they say, I have a Pinterest board.
Great.
Thank
you so much.
Is that good news? Because do you have an honest conversation with them about that Pinterest board to say, okay, let me take you look at your Pinterest board, and you say, look,
thank you so much.
I saw your DC wedding with the red roses, and let me tell you, those were mannequins and those red roses were fake, and that took 3 days to shoot.
Yeah.
I love it when they come to me with their Pinterest boards.
Do you really?
Absolutely, because even though I may not be able to get them what they're looking at, I can then make suggestions based on what I can get them.
And based on you're the expert.
Right.
You're like, hey, so I totally get what you're saying. I can see now what's going on, but let me tell you how this is going to make it better for you within your budget. And let me tell you why. Right. And then they go, oh my God, that Keith, he just saved me like $500,000. And like,
that's happened.
I mean, but here's the thing, like you can see if their Pinterest board is like a hot mess and they're like, pinning all these mountain venue stuff, but they're getting married on the beach in South Beach. And you're like, Lord, like that says a lot without them having to say a lot. You know what I mean? Like you can say, okay, this is where we're going to start the conversation.
Oh my God. You just really brought it down to a pin there. Cause I just thought, because I thought,
but if it's like really specific,
and
they're like, da-da-da-da-da, you're like, thank you so much.
So their Pinterest board
and you
really
take the win.
That's what I'm saying. Their Pinterest board could really tell you that your bride is a hot mess.
Wow.
Well, listen, a lot of times they can't verbalize
y'all telling Pinterest board now.
We've all had the client who comes to you and you're like, I mean, I have
too many interests.
They come to you and they're like, this is what I want, blah, blah, blah. So simple. That's my favorite phrase. Simple.
So simple.
I want a simple thing.
Right.
And then you get down to it and it's like, nothing simple about that.
That totally makes total sense.
But
Oh my God.
what is simple, and it's hard for people to verbalize.
It really
Hey,
is.
I want something simple. You're like, sweet, right?
And then you look at the board.
You see their Pinterest board and you're like, nothing
That's
simple
not
about
simple.
that. Because it's the visual, it's that visual search, right? Like, again, it's that like my husband versus like the pictures, like, and this is why Pinterest plays so well into wedding planning. It's like, think about when you type into Google, you just get like a bunch of words,
right?
Like the answer, right? This is why my husband's like, it's amazing. I can just type in like how to fix the dryer and da, da, da.
Right.
And like, but when you type into Google, you're like blush bouquet, South Beach, right? You can see those pretty pictures right away, and you don't have to like click into it.
Right.
You already know right away, is it going to solve my problems or not? How annoying. You're clicking and you're like, on Google, you're like, is this the answer to my question?
Right.
And then you're like, well, not long ago, it was like, can you give Tylenol to
dogs?
Like to a 2-year-old or something, or like what's too young for Tylenol or whatever. And the last thing that came up was like from 2007 or something. I'm like, surely someone has read it, something about this, but and there wasn't that like visual.
But just FYI, Google has a little tool setting thing up in the upper right that you can within the last month. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Did you not know that?
No.
What? How do you not know this? Like I've got Google.
You can do it by date?
Yes. So I've got Google up right now, like literally.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you
go to your most recent view and all that stuff.
Okay, if you go to google.com right now, guys, google.com right now, right? And if you, I can't believe y'all don't know this.
I'm going to be present, but I will look this up.
There are settings, and you can see it on the bottom right, and it'll say advanced search settings, and you can do it by date, by time. You can say last week, last month, last 24 hours. Oh my God, I can't believe
Where are you looking that it says that?
Children, watch out for your parents.
I was just about to say, are you on your phone? Hold on.
But let's translate this to weddings real quick. You're talking about like, you're just saying, like, say you want to look up what does your venue look at night.
Right.
You can already see the pictures from the day. You're like, that doesn't, like, it's that visual search that plays in so well to wedding planning. And that's just on the client side.
Right.
It's like, as a wedding professional on the content side, the vendor side, like we have what Pinterest wants.
Right.
Pinterest wants beautiful, inspirational, helpful things. And what are we if we're not beautiful, helpful things in the wedding industry, right? We solve people's problems.
Yep.
And we make it pretty. Right.
Make it pretty.
And every weekend, it's funny because I'm in all these different groups with other industries talking Pinterest marketing, right? And everyone is so jealous of us in the wedding industry because we have what Pinterest wants, gorgeous images, and not just like a little bit, it's like a lot. And every weekend, and not just like one or two, it's like, here's a bouquet. And I'm not just going to get one picture. I'm going to get it every angle. And like every side and up, down, sideways, like I have a photographer who comes to my house once a week. I've got nothing but content. And so this is why I love Pinterest so much because it gives the customer what they want. Right. Yeah. And then and we have what Pinterest is looking for.
Julianne Smith, I have to tell you, I'm sorry. We do have to like bring this to a close because we are over our hour. But oh my God, what a fascinating conversation because we went like literally all over the place. And I just love you. I just love you. I can't wait to meet you like in person because I feel like we're kismet. Anyway, and by the way, Brooke, Julianne, the first name of the first person she ever made a garter for was Brooke.
Oh yes, you weren't on here when I went into that.
Nope.
I was going to drop that nugget, and then you weren't here.
And who remembered that? Thank you very much. I'm just saying. All right, but
I picked the right name then.
You really did. So Julianne Smith, thank you again for being part of the show. Oh my goodness, there is so much here that you definitely want to go back and re-listen to our podcast, which you can pick up on iHeart, iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, any of those, even Amazon, and re-listen to it as many times as you want. But for today, we're going to say goodbye. So Marci Guttenberg with An Affair to Remember by Marci. Hi, Marci. And the always gorgeous Brooke Logan Stoner. And then, of course, Julianne Smith, the www, the gartergirl.com. Everybody say goodbye. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Goodbye.